Mr. Vikram Nair.
Mr. Speaker, I speak in support of this bill. Singapore is well known for its no-nonsense approach to weapons possession. The possession of guns and firearms by members of the public is prohibited, and the usage of firearms is heavily restricted and generally limited to the armed forces, police, and a few private gun clubs. The possession of other weapons, including items that might be used as weapons, such as knives, is also controlled, and people are not permitted to be in possession of such items in public without good reason. Strict laws like this have played an important part in keeping Singapore safe, and we do not have horror stories of shootings and gun violence. While we do have other weapons being used in incidents like gang fights, the strict laws against improper possession have also permitted police to move preemptively in such cases, arresting individuals in possession of weapons without good reason, even if they have not used it for violence yet. As such, violent fights with weapons are also few and far between. Against this backdrop, the latest changes to legislation and harmonization of several different bills tightens and expands the laws to cover developing areas of potential threats. One example of such a potential threat is the 3D printing of gun parts. While smuggling guns or gun parts into Singapore and around Singapore is not easy and subject to the strictest of penalties, it has now become possible to manufacture gun parts with 3D printers, which are becoming more widely available. The blueprints for such weapons may be found on the internet, or more commonly, the darknet. With such blueprints and a 3D printer, individuals could 3D print usable gun parts. The new rules will make it an offense for people to possess the blueprints required to 3D print gun parts. Now, this is a tough measure, but one which I welcome, as the more easily something dangerous is readily available, the tougher the rules must be to discourage its possession and use. This sends a clear, no-nonsense signal that we are remaining tough on the possession of weapons, even if all that one possesses is a blueprint to 3D print such parts. While the use of guns by military and the police are heavily controlled, one area where members of the public may access weapons is at private shooting ranges. A few years ago, in 2017, the police already had imposed measures to better control activities at these premises, including measures to make such premises more secure and to better control the types of weapons being used. Now, this bill allows the police to issue licenses for ranges, which allows police more flexibility to regulate how they will operate through the imposition of license conditions. And they would be able to ensure the most stringent conditions for use of firearms in Singapore, and to ensure that such firearms are not easily available outside. The introduction of a class licensing regime for lower risk activities balances the generally tough approach with practicality. There are some people who participate in lower risk activities, such as the use of air rifles for sport. The introduction of a class licensing regime to deal with these is a clever method and saves each person the hassle of getting an individual license. Class licenses have been used in other areas too, for example, in legislation by MCI in relation to the media. Although in this case, given many of the class licensees will be individuals, it will be important for them to know the relevant rules that will apply. And I'll be interested to know what steps the government will take to keep the class licensees informed of such rules. While the mechanism being used is that of a license, in substance, what needs to be done is for the individuals in possession of such weapons to know exactly what is permitted and what is not, to stay out of trouble. Now, the other changes largely involve the rationalization and harmonization of offenses that existed across many different pieces of legislation. There were some inconsistencies in this previously, as different offenses were covered by different rules and developed at different times. But the overall changes in this new legislation rationalizes the penalties based on degree of culpability, which means there'll be higher penalties for intentional offenses, and less for unintentional ones, as well as the seriousness of the harm, which means higher penalties for more dangerous weapons and where weapons are used to cause harm. Now, these are, of course, very sensible and the general principles on which all criminal legislation is based. I therefore support this bill. Thank you.